Good morning, all. Please sit on your seat. We will start the meeting soon. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, from physical and virtual. Good morning and warmly welcome all distinguished participants the second forecast group discussion of ASEAN Renewable Energy Long-Term Roadmap. My name is Vientiane, Technical Staff of Biomass Energy Promotion Division, Department of Energy Efficiency and Promotion, Ministry of Energy and Mines, Lao PDR. It is my great honor and privilege to be served as a master of ceremony for today. Since we are having the second group discussion of ASEAN Renewable Energy Long-Term Roadmap, we would like to inform the physical and virtual protocol as the following. First, participants should ensure a convenient environment and reduce background noise, such as turn off cell phone and etc. Second, participants should mount their microphone and only unmute if they wish to present or speak. Third, participants should only turn on their video camera when presenting or making intervention, as turning on the video may impact the quality of the connection and voice quality. For Q&A sections, those who wish to ask or speak may use the chat room by typing their country and name and send it to everyone. The moderator will acknowledge the request to speak and determine the speaking order. Once the moderator acknowledges, they may turn on the video. Only unmute the microphone once you are called by the moderator to speak. To start this meeting, it would be preceded by an opening from Deputy Director General, Department of Energy Efficiency and Promotion, Ministry of Energy and Mines, from Deputy Undersecretary for Renewable Energy, Ministry of Natural Resources, Environment, Climate Change, from Senior Manager of ASEAN Center for Energy. To official welcome all distinguished participants, may I now invite Mr. Kamman Sorpaser, Deputy Director General, Department of Energy Efficiency and Promotion, Ministry of Energy and Mines, Lao PDR, to deliver an opening remark, please.
Excellency, Mr. Abdul Rasib, Senior Under Secretary for Sustainable Energy, Ministry, Natural Resource, Environment and Climate Change, Malaysia, or RESSN Chair, Mr. Hong Peng Liu, Director of Energy Division of UNESCAP, Mr. Christopher Samora, Senior Manager of ASEAN Center for Energy. Distinguished Speaker, IESSN Focal Point, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of Ministry of Energy and Mines, Lao PDR, I would like to warmly welcome you to the second focus group discussion on ASEAN Renewable Energy Long-Term Roadmap. This event is an important opportunity for us to work together toward achieving sustainable development goals through sustainable energy. Lao PDR is proud to host this event and be part of the ongoing effort to develop and promote renewable energy in ASEAN. Before we begin our discussion, allow me to express my sincere gratitude to our esteemed guests from the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, or UNESCAP, the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, and the Stockholm Environment Institute, SEI, for their participation and invaluable contribution. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this focus group discussion on ASEAN Renewable Energy Long-Term Roadmap, which is essential part of the 30th annual meeting of the Renewable Energy Subsector Network. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, as we gather here today, we recognize the need for increased cooperation and collaboration across the region to achieve our shared vision of a sustainable energy future for ASEAN. We must take bold and innovative steps to unlock the full potential of renewable energy and accelerate our transition toward a more sustainable and secure energy system. I believe that this focus group discussion will provide an excellent opportunity to level our understanding of ASEAN renewable energy potential, set out renewable energy target, and finalize the roadmap planning. We are confident that with the expertise and active participation of all participants, we will achieve this outcome and pave a way for a more sustainable energy future for ASEAN. Once again, I welcome you all to this event and look forward to productive and meaningful discussion over the course of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kamman Sopraset, for warm opening remarks. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Mo Erwan Mislan, Deputy Under Secretary for Renewable Energy, Ministry of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change to deliver an opening remark, please.
Thank you, MC. Mr. Kamman Soprasot, Deputy Director General, Department of Energy, Efficiency and Promotion, Ministry of Energy and Mines, Lao PDR. Mr. Christopher Zamora, Senior Manager of ASEAN Center of Energy. Senior official and participant from ASEAN member state countries, RESSN focal points, official from ACE, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning and salam sejahtera. Let me first welcome all of you to the second focus group discussion on ASEAN long-term renewable energy roadmap. The organization of this session is timely as the ASEAN region pursue and embark on its journey for a sustainable and low-carbon energy transition. The development of this long-term renewable energy roadmap will be an official reference to all ASEAN member states in collectively achieving the 23% renewable energy share of total primary energy supply and 35% total power installed capacity by 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, ASEAN being one of the most dynamic and fastest growing region in the world is expected to double its economic growth in the coming decade. The energy demand for the region is as well expected to increase in tandem with the economic expansion. Therefore, ASEAN member states, including Malaysia, have been intensifying our efforts to ensure a secure, inclusive, affordable, and more sustainable pathway for the development of the energy sector. This includes action to facilitate the implementation of renewable energy program in power supply, transport, and infrastructure, while focusing also on energy efficiency to effectively reduce the GHG emission of the region. Therefore, this workshop is part of continuous effort under the RESSN to map out the key priorities, opportunities, and the possible pathway to ensure the timely achievement of the RE aspiration in the region as set out under the APAEC Phase 2. I trust that the work undertaken in the formulation of this long-term RE roadmap will provide a holistic perspective on the outlook of RE development in the ASEAN region collectively, while supporting respective national energy transition agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, in our quest to formulate this ASEAN long-term renewable energy roadmap, I was informed that this session is aimed at seeking the relevant inputs from ASEAN member states on priorities areas, status of energy, technology and infrastructure, potential data sharing, as well as getting insight for the energy system development in ASEAN. Therefore, I urge all of you to participate actively. I believe that the inputs from the respective ASEAN member states are essential for the formulation of the encompassing regional long-term renewable energy roadmap. Last but not least, I wish all of you a fruitful deliberation. With that, I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mo Erwan, Ms. Lan, for your comprehensive opening remark. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Christopher G. Samora, Senior Manager of ASEAN Center for Energy, to deliver an opening remark, please.
Thank you, Ms. MC. On behalf of Dr. Nuki Agia-Utama, the Executive Director of the ASEAN Center for Energy, allow me to deliver his opening remarks, and I read. Good morning, Excellencies. Mr. Kaman Soprashot, Deputy Director General from the Department of Energy Efficiency and Promotion of the Ministry of Energy and Mines, Lao PDR. Mr. Muhammad Irwan Misran, Deputy Undersecretary for Renewable Energy, Ministry of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change, Malaysia, on behalf of the RESSN Chair. Mr. Hong Peng Liu, Director of Energy Division of the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, UNESCOP. Distinguished speakers, Renewable Energy Subsector Network Focal Points, representative from the ASEAN Secretariat, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant good morning to all of you once again. On behalf of the ASEAN Center for Energy, I am delighted to welcome you all to the second focus group discussion of ASEAN Renewable Energy Long-Term Roadmap. ACE expresses its thanks to the Ministry of Energy and Mines of Lao PDR and to all my colleagues at the ASEAN Center for Energy for exceptionally hosting this event. We also thank all the participants and experts from UNESCOP, International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, and the Stockholm Environment Institute, SEI, for your time and efforts to share your perspectives and insights with us. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we first introduced the concept of developing the ASEAN Renewable Energy Regional Approach during the 29th Annual Meeting of Renewable Energy Subsector Network in May of 2022. The concept laid down the foundation of ASEAN Renewable Energy Long-Term Roadmap development, and it is designed to be the most ambitious pathway of available regional energy outlooks and national policy documents or roadmaps to define strategic policies, cross-cutting elements, and long-term roadmap timeframe. In the first FGD, the RESSN and the working group have agreed on the renewable energy target definition, strategic pillars, and cross-cutting issues in the roadmap. As a follow-up, in today's meeting, the second FGD is aimed to showcase the findings of the ASEAN Renewable Energy Approach and gather a comprehensive evaluation from all experts and distinguished invitees joining us today. We hope by the end of the FGD, we can all have same clear understanding of ASEAN's renewable energy potential, how ambitious we can set out the target, and to agree on the finalization of the ASEAN Regional Energy Long-Term Roadmap. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the ASEAN Renewable Energy Long-Term Roadmap is part of the Program Area Number 5 of the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation Phase 2 for the period 2021 to 2025, and it is expected to be launched at the 41st ASEAN Ministers of Energy meeting, AMEM. Recognizing the high importance of ASEAN Renewable Energy Long-Term Roadmap as a priority milestone of 2023 activities, I hope that everyone can enjoy and indulge in the discussion that we will have today, or even clarify the initial findings from our discussion. Once again, I would like to thank all the respectable partners and honorable participants for supporting today's event, and many thanks to our distinguished speakers, moderators, and panelists for your excellent preparations to share knowledge and perspectives. Thank you, and I wish you good health and a productive discussion. This opening statement is delivered for and on behalf of Dr. Nuki Agia-Utama, the Executive Director of the ASEAN Center for Energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Christopher G. Samarat, for your wonderful opening remark. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite Mr. Chairman to sit on the floor together with all participants to join us the group photo sections. For delegates who present from Zoom link could activate the Zoom camera so could take all photo, please. Thank you for your cooperation and attention. Now we come to the overview of focus group discussion activities. For the activities opening sections, insight from various study strategy approach for effective renewable energy expansion in ASEAN. We have ASEAN Renewable Energy Regional Approach, SDG 7 Roadmap of selected ASEAN member countries, Energy Transition Roadmap of selected ASEAN member countries, Bioenergy, Bioeconomy, and Climate Resilience in Southeast Asia, Challenges and Opportunities, Q&A sections, coffee break, and then we have closing sections related to invite speaker and AMS focal points. Ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to hand over the floor to Mr. Dewa Ladidya Malenta, Research Analysis of ASEAN Center for Energy, to take the floor for being moderator.
Thank you, Ms. Filaya. Good morning, Mr. Kaman Soprasert, Deputy Director General, Department of Energy Efficiency and Promotion, Ministry of Energy, Mines, Lao PDR. Mr. Muhammad Erwan Misran, Deputy Undersecretary for Renewable Energy, Ministry of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change, Malaysia, on behalf of ASEAN Chair. Mr. Michael Williamson, the Section Chief of Energy Divisions of United Nations Economic and Social Commissions for Asia and the Pacific, UNESCAP, who's joining us virtually. Also, Mr. Christopher Zamora, the Senior Manager of ASEAN Center for Energy, ASEAN REISS and Focal Points, all distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dewa Margenta, a Sustainable Renewable Energy Officer from ASEAN Center for Energy, and today I'm honored to serve you as a moderator for the webinar entitled Insights from Various Strategic Studies, Approach for Effective RE Expansion in ASEAN. So over the next an hour and a half, we will overview various approaches that can be taken by ASEAN to achieve the renewable energy targets, also sustainable development goals, which is surely sparks some insightful conversation. First of all, understanding the various scenarios in supporting ASEAN renewable energy roadmap is important because it helps policymakers anticipate challenge and risk, assess different pathways to success, encourage stakeholder engagement, and facilitate resource allocation. This allows ASEAN to develop contingency plans, evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of different strategies, involve a diverse range of stakeholders, and prioritize investment in those areas that will have a greatest impact. Therefore, a strategic approach is necessary for the effectiveness of the RE expansion in ASEAN and significantly contribute to the region's overall economic and social development. So I would like to remind everyone that this is an open forum where all opinions and perspectives are valued and encouraged. So I invite all the participants who participate directly in Lao or virtually from Zoom to join the discussions by asking questions or sharing your own experiences or insights and engaging with your fellow attendees. So today we have 4 energy experts in their respective field. So first, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Francis Johnson, the Senior Research Fellow of Stockholm Environment Institute, or SEI, who's participating with us in Lao. So Dr. Johnson has over 25 years of experience in the interdisciplinary energy, climate analysis, capacity building and research, focusing especially on biomass and land use in relation to climate and development goals. He currently leads the SEI initiative on governing bioeconomic pathways. Prior to joining the SEI, he was a senior research associate in the Energy Analyst Program at Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory, USA. Welcome, Dr. Johnson. Secondly, we have Mr. Anis Zaman, Energy Division Officer of UNESCAP, who is joining also with us virtually. So Mr. Zaman has extensive experience working in sustainable energy development and climate change mitigation and adaptation field, which is highly focusing on increasing the energy access, improving livelihood, and building resilience of vulnerable communities in developing countries. Currently, he is supporting the United Nations Economic and Social Commissions for Asia and the Pacific, UNESCAP, to develop the energy transition pathways to achieve the SDG 7 and the NDC emission reduction target under the Paris Agreement, using the National Expert SDG tool for energy planning, or next step. So I would like to make sure whether Mr. Zaman is already in the Zoom. Mr. Zaman, are you there?
Yes, I am here. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, crystal clear. Thank you, Mr. Zaman.
Thank you.
Third, we have Ms. Badaria Yosiana, Program Officer of Southeast Asia of IRENA, who is also joining with us virtually. Ms. Yosiana joined the IRENA as a Program Officer, Southeast Asia, under Country Engagement and Partnership Divisions. She managed the agency work on supporting Southeast Asia in the development and implementation of national and regional energy strategies programs through IRENA's regional initiatives. Prior to joining IRENA, she worked for the ASEAN Center for Energy for 4 years, and she was highly involved in the ASEAN-German Energy Program, a joint cooperation program with GIZ with the objective to improve regional cooperation in renewable energy and energy efficiency and conservation field in the ASEAN regions. So does Ms. Yosiana joining us in the Zoom right now?
Yes, hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Yosiana. And last, we have Ms. Monica Merdekawati, Research Analyst of ASEAN Center for Energy, who is also joining us virtually from Indonesia. So Ms. Merdekawati is a Research Analyst of ACE with over 6 years of experience in the renewable energy field. She's responsible for the engagement with the government officials and various energy studies covering the energy investments and ASEAN's energy policy. Prior to joining the ACE, she was a developer of wind and solar farms in Indonesia. Does Ms. Merdekawati is on the Zoom right now?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear my voice clearly?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, crystal clear, Miss. Thank you. So today I would like to start this session by asking Ms. Merdekawati. So, Ms. Merdekawati, could you please share with us the importance of regional cooperation to support more renewable energy penetration? And you may start your presentation now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dewa, for the opportunity. May I request the presentation to be shown up the in the screen.
I'm sorry, Miss Monica. So your voice is cracking. Could you make sure that you have already in the place that have a strong internet connection? Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Miss Monica?
Yeah, hello. Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, but your voice is
Can you
cracking.
hear me? Or maybe I will try to turn off the video for better quality.
Yes, you may, Miss Monica.
How about now? Can you can you hear me? To the laptop. Can you hear me now? Apologies for the technical difficulties. Yeah, hello everyone. I hope you can hear me well, but if not, please feel free to let me know. First, allow me to introduce myself. Hello, my name is Monica Merdekawati. I'm a researcher of Sustainable and Renewable Energy Department of ASEAN Center for Energy. It is such a pleasure for me to be part of this important meeting with the excellent lineup of speakers. For the next 10 minutes, hopefully, I will share the key insights of our recent study on ASEAN renewable energy regional approach. Next slide, please. Hello. Okay. Yeah. First, allow me to start with briefly introducing ASEAN Center for Energy. ACE is an international organization under the purview of ASEAN Secretariat that represent the 10 ASEAN member states' interests in the energy sector. ACE has three main roles as think tank, energy data, and knowledge hub, and also catalyst. Our main purpose is to support the implementation of the APAEC in achieving the energy security, affordability, accessibility, and sustainability for all. Next slide, please. APAEC is also the regional blueprint for the energy cooperation in the framework of the ASEAN Economic Community. It has 7 program areas as presented here. The primary goal is to enhance energy connectivity and market integration. This study will specifically support the achievement of renewable energy target to achieve 23% share of total primary energy supply and 35% installed capacity by 2025. Next slide, please. The study of ASEAN Renewable Energy Regional Approach is one of energy priorities under the ASEAN Economic Blueprint that also included in the APAEC phase 1 as one of the priority milestones. In this study, we want to identify the most ambitious available scenarios from the outlook and conditional targets of the months. It is based on the outcomes of this regional approach are expected to demonstrate possible decarbonization pathways through more coordinated and solid regional cooperation. Member states to ramp up regional RE development, to guide the efforts in establishing enabling environments for the RE investment, XRE ambitions to 100% by 2050 term roadmap. Next slide, please. So yeah, in this slide, let's start from understanding the ASEAN energy status from numbers. On the supply side, fossil fuels dominated ASEAN's energy mix in 2020. Oil, coal, and natural gas share take roughly 1/3 each annually throughout the past decade. Despite, if we look closer, solar generation jumped in 2013 from 50 million ton of oil equivalent to 125, and wind also increased, and also the hydro also doubled. By 2020, the overall RE share is considerably modest, with only 14.2% of total primary energy supply. Next slide. Looking into the installed capacity mix, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam installed more than 5 energy technologies by 2020, indicating the diversity of supply. 5 member states depend on natural gas as their fuel for electricity generation. 3 member states depend on coal. 3 member states depend on hydro. And with limited coal and gas reserves, ASEAN energy sector will increasingly need imported supplies, hence will be more exposed to the risk of volatile prices. With a more diversified power generation mix, the member states might recover faster from the price volatility, hence enhancing regional energy security. Next slide, please.
Sorry, Ms. Monica, you are muted. Could you unmute yourself?
Yeah. Sorry. From the policy perspective, this slide summarizes ASEAN's strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats, which based on the national level identification. Four notable strengths are: first, all member countries have clear commitment to increase the renewable energy ambition. Second, most member countries have policy instruments in place to incentivize renewable energy. 6 member states have implemented cross-border power trade, and all countries are willing to participate in the ASEAN power grid extension. And fourth, the 8 member states eligible to receive international support to realize their conditional targets. While for the weaknesses, we identified 5. First is some member states haven't considered full coal phase out. Second, shifting political priorities and diplomatic stances after leadership changes. Third, economic differences might challenge power trading. Fourth, no regional facility for renewable energy project planning and investment. Fifth, differences in dynamic performance of various national grids. And we also identified 6 opportunities here, where the member states could optimize experience sharing and also regional coordination to mobilize climate finance strategically, and R&D prioritization for short, mid, and long-term planning, establishing financing facilities at regional level, extending and improving ASEAN power grid to untap renewable energy potential, so eventually ASEAN can increase renewable energy ambitions. In conclusion, regional integration requires aligning policies and regulation in specific areas within member states, especially with regard to the energy, trade, and environment. Regional renewable energy integration will not be beneficial unless each member states have adequate infrastructure and funds to support the implementation and cross-border infrastructure for regional integration. Next slide, please. The next 2 slides capture key strengths and weaknesses at country level. For example, Brunei Darussalam with its strategic location for grid integration and its strong financial capacity, but having not clear implementation plan for the renewable energy and climate investment, while Cambodia with extensive experience in cross-border power trade and abundant renewable energy resources, but the country haven't specified technical assistance for the NDC conditional targets. For Indonesia, with rapid increase of renewable energy target to reach net zero by 2060, but face technical challenge in connecting the country's main grids with the rest of the ASEAN countries. Laos with expensive experience in hydro development and cross-border power trade, but coal still considered as transition plan in the NDC. Malaysia with its extensive experience in the solar development and national priority in RE investment, but still face challenge in securing land for solar and long approval for the process of hydro. Next slide, please. Myanmar with its increased RE targets, but having still ease of doing business index low. Philippines with experience in the implementing renewable portfolio standard scheme and fostering competitive RE development in unbundled electricity market. But similar to Indonesia, Philippines have the challenge to connect its national grid to the regional grid. Singapore aimed for 4 gigawatt electricity import from low carbon electricity by 2035, and also the first country to implement carbon tax scheme and has strong financial capacity, but the country has limited locally sourced energy sources. Thailand is experienced in the cross-border interconnection and has planned solid electric vehicle targets, but natural gas still hold dominant role. And Vietnam with notable experience in rapidly expanding renewable energy since 2019, but PDP8 not yet finalized and rumored to still include coal power plant as the energy transition strategy. Next slide, please. Next slide. By assessing regional energy indicators and performing the SWOT analysis, we identified 7 fundamental phases for over 30 years for the ASEAN Renewable Energy Regional Approach. This regional approach will serve as the baseline for developing the ASEAN Renewable Energy Long-Term Roadmap. Here we can see that in the first 5 years, the regional approach is dedicated to build the minimal enabling environment for the RE investment, improving the existing frameworks in the member states with more advanced RE policies in place. 4 important phases for the region in the regional approach in the first 5 years is strengthening the enabling environment, regional mechanism for the climate financing as per NDC, R&D, and also investment attractiveness. In the year 5 until 10, efforts will be dedicated to establish the regional investment platform called the ASEAN Renewable Energy Facility. This facility is intended as platform to exchange the lessons learned for the RE implementation, develop business model, and discuss regional investment priorities. From the year 10 until 30 are allocated to the mobilizing financing and dialogues to realize more RE integration between member states and on various islands. So by the 2050, we are expecting that ASEAN as the region can maximize the RE ambition to reach 100% RE share. Next slide, please. We also identified the importance of key stakeholders' roles in realizing the effective regional approach. First and foremost is the 4 ASEAN ministries on energy, transportation, environment, and finance. ACE with other NGOs and research institutions to provide advocacy, advisory, facilitation, research, and capacity development, financial institutions, the donors, and private sectors to carry out the financing, investment, and de-risking mechanism, all working together to monitor and evaluate the regional approach, replicating best practices, and take the best from global experience. Next slide, please. In the journey to finalizing the ASEAN Renewable Energy Long-Term Roadmap, we identified 7 key recommendations as indicated here. First, follow the member states' examples, strengthen the renewable energy investment for the economy, focus on the climate change, capacity building for the top decision makers, and to implement the gigawatt ASEAN approach. Next slide. Lastly, I am also pleased to share that this report is available for download in ACE website. For your kind attention and apologies for the technical difficulties, and I look forward to the discussion session. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Ms. Mrekawati, for the insightful presentation. So secondly, I would like to invite Mr. Zaman. So does Mr. Zaman in Zoom, just to make sure again?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so good morning, Mr. Zaman. And first, I would like to raise the question. So Mr. Zaman, could you share with us about your findings on the strategy that must be taken by ASEAN countries to achieve the SDG goals? And by answering this, you may start your presentation now. Thank you.
Sure. I'm just asking the organizer, can I share my screen if that is possible?
The team, is it possible? Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think it's working. I'm just bringing up my presentation on the screen. So I believe we can see my presentation in full screen mode.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Thank you, moderator. And good morning to everyone attending this focus group discussion. My presentation is on SDG 7 roadmap on selected ASEAN member countries. Now this is ESCAP presentation, although I'm not really an ESCAP staff. I'm actually located at Murdoch University in Australia, but supporting ESCAP energy transition project, particularly the SDG 7 roadmap development initiative. Before I dive into the SDG 7 roadmap that have been developed for in the ASEAN region, I would like to just give you a little background on how this started. So in 2018, there was a ministerial conference at ESCAP, which is second Asian Pacific Forum on Asian Pacific Energy Forum, which made a declaration that ESCAP should support countries with the development of roadmaps, SDG 7 roadmaps. And for this development of the roadmap, the ESCAP started to look at what are the things that needed. And it was identified that there are really a lot of linkages between and among all the SDG 7 indicators and targets. And also there is emission reduction target under the NDC, which is nationally determined contributions, that also need to be considered while developing the roadmaps. In addition, excuse me, there were different constraints, drivers, and priorities, including the economic growth that needs to be sustainable, population growth needs to be considered, urbanization is increasing, also the energy security somehow will need to be included, resources availability, and also, of course, the cost effectiveness of the energy transition pathway that will be developed. With all these elements coming together, it was confirmed that there is a need for an integrated approach to the SDG 7 roadmap development or energy planning in the context of SDG 7. That actually led to the development of a unique software or platform, I would say, that National Expert SDG Tool for Energy Planning, in short, NEXT. And this has three main components. The first component actually looks into the energy and emissions model, and the second component does the economic analysis of the energy transition pathways that are developed, and also the energy technologies in general. Also, the third component is used to do the scenario or policy analysis, and finally we get the output as the policy recommendations. I'm not going into very details of these because if there are any questions, I can answer them later. What the SDG 7 roadmap is supposed to deliver as an output is that there will be a couple of scenarios developed from the analysis, which will be used by the policymakers to identify the best scenario that they would like to implement, and that the one that is suitable for the country to implement. There will be identification of enabling or most suitable technologies enabling policy measures. Also, there will be a cost analysis, cost-benefit analysis, as you can see from the economic analysis that I mentioned in the last slide. Some decision-making tools like the marginal abatement cost curve, local levelized cost of electricity, all these will need to be included. And also, we should have an online portal that will actually host all the results and policy recommendations. Now, coming to what are the roadmaps have been developed. So we see that quite a few roadmaps have been developed, both at national as well as at the subnational level. So looking at the page here, we can see that Brunei Darussalam, it's currently ongoing. In Indonesia, the national roadmap has been developed, and also there has been a local roadmap for city of Jakarta. Lao PDR national roadmap, Philippines, 3 cities and 1 city is ongoing. Thailand, 3 provinces, provincial roadmaps have been developed, and the national roadmap is under development, and Vietnam national roadmap has been developed. All these roadmaps that have been developed are already on ESCAP website for download and have a look. Looking at the kind of challenges or the progress in terms of the different SDG 7 targets and indicators, we can see that in most countries, the access to electricity is either achieved or right on track to be achieved by 2030. But when we look at universal access to clean cooking, we can see that there is a lot of variation. In Indonesia, it is expected that by 2030, the remaining households who are not connected at this moment to clean cooking technologies and fuel, they will be having access. Vietnam is very close will be very close by 2030. But if we look at Lao PDR, there is, you can see that it is expected under the current policy scenario there will be a 20% access by 2030, which will mean that about 5.4 million population will not have the connections to clean cooking fuels and technology. So there is a huge amount of initiative that is needed to really achieve this target in Lao PDR. Now, when it comes to renewable energy, there are mixed results as well. As you can see, the analysis says that the Indonesian National Roadmap says that the current progress will not have the opportunity to achieve the 23% target that Indonesia has by 2025. Also, it will mean that the NDC target will have a problem or difficulty, I would say, in achieving, which is about 11% of emission reduction from the energy sector itself. Looking at Lao PDR, that renewable energy share is expected to reach 20% by 2030. But if this is actually all these shares of renewable energy I'm talking about excludes the traditional use of biomass, because the reason that we excluded traditional use of biomass is because, if we look at the clean cooking target by 2030, this will need to be removed. So that means it is better to exclude those items from there. Looking at Vietnam, we can see that Vietnam has the potential to increase the renewable energy share further, and under the SDG 7 scenario, we can say that it can increase to 22% share of renewable energy. Looking at the energy efficiency, in Indonesia's the current target of 1% annual reduction may be unlikely that it will achieve under the current scenario. We suggest that this target needs to be increased to 1.5%, which will ensure that the SDG 7 target for energy efficiency is achieved. And there are a lot of opportunities, including improving the building energy, introduce or high level of introduction of MEPS, the minimum energy performance standard, and also moving on to electric vehicles. Rapid promotion of electric vehicles will ensure that this is achieved. In Lao PDR, energy intensity, we have seen that it is increasing, or it has increased between 2012 to 2018. That means that it is going the other way. And that increasing is really on a high, which is about 17% per year. So we found out that it would be very difficult for Lao PDR to really double the improvement rate compared to the base year. So we have suggested that it should use the global improvement rate instead, and also identified the measures that can be implemented, including introducing MEPS, clean cooking, moving on to clean cooking, because clean cooking actually increases the efficiency, and also to moving on to electric vehicles rapidly, that will also increase energy efficiency. For Vietnam, energy intensity declined at an average annual rate of about 1% per year between 1990 and 2010. And we have suggested that if stronger MEPS can be implemented in the commercial sector and electric cooking stove, it will increase the energy efficiency further. Just looking at some common findings, clean cooking has been one of the major recommendations, and finding that it needs improvement, and not only because it helps to achieve the SDG 7 target, but also it has multiple other benefits, including the social benefits which comes from health of women and children particularly, reduces their time for wood collection and increases productivity at the household level. But also it also increases the energy efficiency, as I mentioned just now. Energy efficiency improvement should be considered one of the very first steps in energy planning. And even this particular statement is true for the current focus group discussion, because we are talking about long-term renewable energy roadmap. It reduces the energy demand, reduces emissions. That means we will need less investment in renewable energy, which will be more convenient or suitable to really ramp up the renewable energy. Fossil fuel subsidy, we all know this, that it leads to wastages of energy, and also creates an unenabling environment for renewable energy growth. So that also needs to be stopped or eliminated. And energy transition that will achieve the SDG 7 targets is more cost effective than continuing the business as usual. And the savings from such energy transition can help better recover from COVID-19. Just last two slides, continuing on the common findings, coal phase. I know that we have been talking about coal. I saw that also included in the previous presentation. So coal-fired generation is not economically feasible. We all know that, and we are seeing that the financial institutions and investors are increasingly moving away from coal and explicitly committing to divest from or restrict financing on thermal coal. So coal-fired power generation poses a risk. And a risk is that there might be a stranded asset in near future. Electrification of the transport sector is important, as I already have mentioned, a lot of benefits, including energy efficiency. And also it is very important if we would like to implement electric cooking or supply electric cooking stoves, or also move on to electric vehicles. So making sure this is very important. Decarbonization of the power sector, of course, this is probably nothing to mention, but it is important, as renewable energy can really help decarbonize the power sector. Additionally, we also explored the opportunity whether there is a potential for the countries to move towards net zero, and we found that moving towards net zero is technically feasible, practical, and also cost effective. So that this was also included in some of the recommendations. Finishing with this capacity building, on the capacity building becomes an integrated part of the SDG 7 roadmap development process. There are multiple options for capacity building. There are online training modules which can be accessed by anyone. There will be you'll be seeing that step-by-step process of doing energy and emissions modeling, and also the process of SDG 7 roadmap development. There is a portal which hosts a very rich database on various energy parameters and indicators that are not only useful for this roadmap development, but also can be used for any other energy analysis and research. And finally, there are on-site training options as well. For example, recently we conducted a 2-day training in Lao PDR in collaboration with the Department of Planning and Cooperation under the Ministry of Energy and Mines. And that was also very useful, because in those on-site training, participants are given hands-on training where they develop energy models using low emissions analysis platform, which is a very widely used platform in this region. So with this, I would like to stop here and hand over the floor back to the moderator. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much, Dr. Anizaman. Third, I would like to invite Ms. Yosiana. So does Ms. Yosiana is on the Zoom?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So first, I would like to ask, so what is your or IRENA perspective on energy transition in ASEAN? And what should be concerned about accelerating the energy transition program? So by answering this, you may start your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dewa. Good morning, everyone. The ASEAN Focal Points, ASEAN and ASEAN Secretariat representatives, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for having me in this very important meeting to share IRENA's work on energy transition roadmap of selected ASEAN member countries. Can I have my slides on the screen, please? All right, you can go to the second slide, please. All right, thanks. So the IRENA's renewable energy roadmap and outlooks determines the potential for countries, regions, and the world to scale up renewables. And the remap assesses renewable energy potential assembled from the bottom up, starting with the country analysis done in collaboration with country experts, and then aggregating these results to arrive at regional and global picture. So at the global level, IRENA's World Energy Transition Outlook charts on evolving pathway to achieving a climate-safe future in the line with the goals of the Paris Agreements, and its 1.5-degree pathway offers a roadmap for accelerating the global energy transitions by positioning electrifications and efficiency as a key drivers of change backed by renewables, hydrogen, and sustainable biomass. And representing core components of its global outlook, the agency's renewable energy transition outlooks provide a more nuanced explorations of both the technical potential and the socioeconomic benefits of the energy transition at the regional level. And drawing on analysis on renewable energy markets, employment, innovations, costs, and capacities, this serves as the basis for informed development strategies and strengthened regional cooperations to both accelerate the progress toward and maximize the benefits from the global transitions to renewables. And IRENA's country-level studies comprise renewable energy roadmaps, readiness assessments, individual socioeconomic analysis, and transition outlooks that form the foundations of its regional and global perspective. Providing practical and actionable recommendations backed by extensive data and knowledge, these products serve as a basis for informed decision-making at the national level to support and advance the global energy transitions. And the REMAP program includes a wide range of knowledge products, report datasets, and documents that can easily download it at IRENA website. Next slide, please. So the roadmap focuses not only just on renewable power technologies, but also technology options in heating, cooling, and transport. And REMAP also focuses on possible technology pathways and assesses numerous other metrics, including technology, sector and system cost, investment needs, externalities relating to air pollution and climate, CO2 emissions, and economic indicators such as employment and economic growth. And based on these country-driven results, REMAP provides insight to policy and decision makers for areas in which actions is needed. Next slide, please. So this pretty much summarized the description of the scenario that we use in our renewable energy roadmap and outlook studies. So the REMAP utilizes a toolkit that allows for the development of full energy balances covering the whole energy system, including energy demand, energy transformations and losses, and primary energy supply. So the toolkit is based on modules that can be used according to the specific requirements and data availability of each project. And the toolkit is parametric model where future energy demand and supply are fully assessed based on input parameters such as activity levels, energy service penetrations, technology shares, and fuel mixes. It is a bottom-up approach, and these are all exogenous inputs to the model, and energy demand is fully determined from those inputs through deterministic model equations. And the toolkit does not rely on cost optimizations or multi-criteria methods. So the IRENA's roadmap consider multiple possible future energy pathways. The two main scenarios are planned energy scenarios, which considers the current and planned policies. and the 1.5 degree scenarios, which follows the IRENA's World Energy Transitions Outlook. And the 1.5 degree scenarios aiming to reach net zero emissions globally by 2050. And for the 1.5 degree scenarios, multiple power sector supply scenarios are considered in the case of the ASEAN Outlook, and one with 90% renewable power generations and one with 100% renewable power generations. Next slide, please. So in the past few years, IRENA has been supporting the regions and also the several ASEAN member states in developing the energy roadmap, including the second Renewable Energy Outlook for ASEAN, which was published at ASEAN Ministerial Meeting last year, September. And also Indonesia and Malaysia Energy Transitions Outlook, which were published October last year and March, respectively. And I will share some of the key message in the next slides. Next slide, please. So here is the key messages from the ASEAN Outlook. So the ASEAN member states still depend heavily on fossil fuels. It still accounts for around 85% of primary energy demand in 2021. And the economic and population growth will result in around 2.5-fold increase in energy demand by 2050. And to achieve the net zero and sustainable development, counter the climate and energy crisis, and improve energy security, ASEAN member states must make use of sustainable renewable energy, which has reached historic low in terms of cost. And IRENA 1.5 degree scenarios will see a big push towards electrifications, renewables, and energy efficiency, which will reduce energy demand by 20% compared to the planned energy scenarios. And in terms of key transitions technology, in 2030, solar PV will be over around 240 gigawatt, and we predict there will be 13 million battery electric vehicle with 3.7 million charging stations, and also improving energy efficiency, materials efficiency and circular economy, and scaling up sustainable bioenergy, hydropower, and geothermal. And in terms of regional power system integrations, it needs to be improved to utilize a total renewable energy around 2,700 gigawatt to 3,400 gigawatt by 2050 in the 1.5 degree scenarios. And we also suggest coal power plant phase out should be expedited, and expansion of fossil fuel dependent infrastructures avoided wherever possible to avoid stranded assets. And in terms of investment for renewable power capacity, power grids and infrastructures, as well as enabling technologies such as storage, it will need to see over $5 trillion in investment over the period to 2050. It will make up around 2/3 of total energy investment of USD 6.3 to 7.3 trillion. And the 1.5 degree scenarios can reduce total costs related to the energy supply by as much as $160 billion cumulatively to 2050. And additionally, it will avoid externalities resulting from USD 508 to USD 1,580 billion cumulatively to 2050. Next slide, please. So the ASEAN regions will be a key driver of global energy demand growth over the next 3 decades. And our projections under PS show that the total final consumptions will increase more than 2.5-fold by 2050. And the region's demand will grow about 3% annually, driven by population and economic growth, as I said before, reaching over to 50 exajoules by 2050. And while an energy transition effort detailed by 1.5 degree scenarios will drive a slower demand growth of 2.4% annually and save 19% of total consumptions compared to PS in the same year. And to realize 1.5 degree scenarios outlined in this report, efforts are needed across the entire energy system of ASEAN. And the following outlines some of the key indicators needed to achieve the 1.5 degree scenarios. And while these are not exhaustive, they outline how much of the transition is based on renewable energy use and electrifications. Next slide, please. And now I'll move to our engagement with Indonesia. So the Outlooks is a country-led and consultative process. It provides a venue for multi-stakeholders dialogue to identify challenges to renewable energy deployment and to devise solutions to existing barriers. So for the productions of these analyses, we conduct together with the government, of course, conducted several consultations, meetings and workshops with various stakeholders in the countries. So I will not go into details because of the time limitations. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So here are some of the key message from the Indonesia Energy Transitions Outlook. So by 2050, the primary energy supply will triple, and it will driven by the populations reaching around 335 million people and a growing economy. And we projected that it is cheaper to pursue the huge untapped potential of renewable sources that is available in Indonesia, that can provide local and affordable solutions to fossil fuels, with the share of renewable energy reaching 2/3 of the country's energy mix in 2050, from just about 14% in today's number. And we also projected that electricity will meet half of the final energy consumptions, with a further quarter of final energy coming from renewable direct use. And the electricity generations will need to rise up to 5-fold to over 1,700 terawatt hours. And so in terms of investment over the longer term, up to $2,400 billion in cumulative to 2050 is needed across the energy system, from the generations to efficiency and enabling infrastructures, doubling what would otherwise be invested in the reference scenarios. And we also see the 1.5-degree scenarios is lower in cost overall, it resulting in savings of $0.4 to $0.6 trillion cumulatively to 2050. And with significant additional cost savings in the 1.5 scenarios, associated external costs from damages to human health and the environment, as well as climate change, from $0.2 to $0.6 trillion cumulatively to 2050. Next slide, please. So this is also the same process. When we did the Malaysia Energy Transition Outlook, we did several consultations workshop with the national stakeholders, together with the ministry, as well as the utilities companies and other stakeholders. And again, I will not go into detail. When we have time, I will be happily answer the questions from the audience. Next slide, please. And I think this is my last slide. So these are some of the key messages from the Malaysia Energy Transitions Outlook. So we projected that by 2050, the energy demand in Malaysia is expected to double from 2018. And with the energy efficiency measures and the use of renewables, Malaysia can reduce its demand by 25% and increase its share of renewable energy mix from just 5% today to almost 60% by 2050 in 1.5-degree scenarios. And in the near term, Malaysia will need to scale up its solar PV to 17 gigawatt and up to 3 million electric vehicles. And of course, supporting infrastructures, including expanding grid flexibility, biofuel supply, and electric vehicle chargers, will need to grow rapidly, with the investment needs in energy transition technologies needs to amount to $50 billion up to 2030. And the total cumulative energy transition investment in Malaysia will reach around $370 billion by 2050, where installing renewable power capacity, providing infrastructures, and implementing on energy efficiency account for the bulk of the energy transition investment, as well as phasing out expensive fossil fuel subsidies. And with this transitioning towards renewable energy, will save Malaysia between $9 billion and $13 billion annually, including avoided cumulative energy, climate, and health costs. And on the energy-related emissions, it could be reduced up to 60% compared to the planned energy scenarios in the 1.5-degree scenarios. So I think this is my last slide, and I'll be happy to answer any questions during the discussions. Thank you, moderator.
Right, thank you, Ms. Yosiana. Last, I would like to invite Dr. Francis Johnson. So, Dr. Francis, would you mind informing us about your perspective on bioenergy and bioeconomy prospect in ASEAN, and by answering the session. So you may start the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and thanks a lot, Dewa. I appreciate the invitation to be here among all the distinguished guests, and we can bring up the presentation. Thanks. Yeah, we can take the next slide already, I think. So yeah, the reason I like to take this focus, it's a little bit different from the others, but very complementary actually, because the other speakers have talked about the renewable energy targets and the development benefits that come alongside them. So I will take a complementary perspective, because the bioenergy is a bit different from the other renewables in its connection to land and biomass and bioeconomy. Can take the next slide. So I want to start with the IPCC assessment showing the reductions that are needed globally in emissions across all sectors. And so if you look at the shade here, purple for transport, industry and buildings, blue for energy, and green for land, all sectors are needing these significant reductions. So it's a sort of very deep and broad transition we are talking about if we want to meet the 1.5 goals. And this is true in all world regions, except that the mixture of sectors will differ in the regions. Next slide. And in particular, the land use sectors are particularly important in Southeast Asia, but also in Latin America and Africa. And if you can see the shading in gray or purple, land use emissions are quite significant in the region and in these regions. And that means that the transition is even more important and fundamental to turn land and biomass from a problem into a solution, actually. And that's why we talk about bioeconomy. Can take the next slide. So just to position this in the language of transitions, I'd like to point out that this transition to a sustainable bioeconomy is compatible and very similar to the renewable transition, but it's occurring along a different pathway, because we talk about how we use land and biomass more sustainably. In a fossil economy is not land intensive, but it's also not renewable and not sustainable. The natural economy, which includes traditional biomass subsistence agriculture, is land intensive, but it's also not sustainable. So we want to get to this modern bioeconomy, which is actually more land intensive, but by using land and biomass wisely and much more efficiently, we get to this result. Can take the next slide. And just to remind that biomass and bioenergy are not the same. And so this is often a difference from the other renewables that's really profound, because it connects so strongly to all these different systems, connects to biodiversity and ecosystems, water quality, quality of life, the resource base, communities, and that's why it can be also very controversial sometimes when undertaking work in the land sectors and biofuels and bioeconomy, but nevertheless extremely important for the transition, for the sustainability transition occurring at the same time with the other renewables. Next slide. So looking then at the options in different sectors, the blue shading are the really cost-effective options, and as the previous speakers noted, solar and wind have become cheap, actually. So this is sort of a no-brainer in most parts of the world. But just because the economic barriers are gone doesn't mean that there are also non-economic barriers. But then if we look at the land-related options, these are a little bit more costly. However, they have synergies with adaptation. And that's why it's very important, I think, in Southeast Asia and a number of other emerging regions that we look much more carefully at the land sectors and bioeconomy, where you can get adaptation benefits, because at the same time we are cutting emissions, we have to invest in adaptation, because we are already committed to a significant amount of climate change, even with the reductions that we're hoping to make. Can take the next slide. So just to go into just to remind of some of the data about land and agriculture and the relevant sectors in ASEAN. There is a quite significant share, actually, of forested area, of course, and the agricultural potential is also very high. So how to use this potential more effectively, and how in particular to make use of the agricultural residues coming from the significant crops in the region. Can take the next slide. So it's also to point out that in several countries in the region, employment and GDP have a quite significant share in the land-related sectors. And for this reason, the opportunities here are also significant, and to connect to development priorities. We can take the next slide. Also, the foreign direct investment inflows are actually quite high in the region. Four countries in ASEAN are among the top 10 in the world in terms of the FDI inflows. And again, here's an opportunity to leverage investment in the most effective way possible and direct it to a cross-cutting approach on bioeconomy that delivers multiple benefits at the same time. We can take the next slide. Forested area is, of course, highly concentrated in Indonesia. The amount of planted forest is relatively small, but is increasing in some countries. And planted forest can be quite important in a modern bioeconomy, but it does not replace natural forest, and particularly those forests that are high carbon and high biodiversity, which need to be maintained, or in some cases restored. But nevertheless, both planted forests and natural forests have important roles. Can take the next. And with agricultural land, there is a significant amount invested in permanent crops, but there's quite a significant amount that's available for other types of development. And here the diversity of the bioeconomy can be exploited because of the rather rich agricultural potential, and distributed reasonably well across the region. Can take the next slide. So the trends in primary crop production, particularly in Indonesia, but in several other countries, have been moving up. And so this increase in production and some part of it reflected as an increase in productivity can contribute to the advancing the bioeconomy, but it does depend on some of the specifics. Can take the next slide. The production indices for agriculture show a bit of a decrease in productivity in some cases, and in others increase. So there is some mixed story here, but of course this will also depend on the investments and the particular crops. Can take the next slide. One important aspect from the perspective of emissions is the use of fertilizers, and the fact that in some cases this can contribute to excess emissions. So it's clear that some of these productivity increases have been related to increased use of inorganic fertilizers. And so looking at other opportunities, such as agroforestry, which don't require increasing any inorganic fertilizers, could be, for example, one way to counter this trend. You can take the next. these commodities are crucial from an energy and bioeconomy perspective: maize, sugarcane, cassava, rice. And so looking in more I think there have been studies in the past, but I think there is a need for some additional research on the advanced biofuels and the use of residues, particularly from these crops, which are quite abundant in the region. You can take the next. So in terms of trade with the EU, which is interesting in terms of some of the investment and the flow of investment versus the flow of products, there's quite a concentration in some cases for particular products and particular countries. So it could be also a strategy to look at increasing the diversity of trade so that let's say a somewhat more robust relation on trade and investment would naturally lead to some diversity in this in the choice of crops and in the choice of exports and imports. Can take the next. Moving to energy sector, then the share of bioenergy in the power sector remains fairly small in the region. This is not necessarily an issue that the share should be high, because there are, as the previous speakers noted, there are plenty of other renewables that will take care of some of the targets. Nevertheless, there certainly are opportunities to increase this share, and I think the IRENA study and the other studies will shed some ideas for expanding this share. Can take the next. The International Energy Agency and its sustainable development scenario for Southeast Asia tried to show what the future scenarios would look like for solid bioenergy, liquid bioenergy, and gaseous. And these are pretty significant changes. One, when it comes to liquid biofuels, which is the graph in the middle, there would be by 2050 a reduction in the conventional, but first an increase, but then a reduction in conventional and a shift to advanced biofuels. And the reason for this is that in a sustainable bioeconomy, we need to be using land and biomass as effectively and efficiently as possible. So the more advanced biofuels using significantly less land and resources compared to the energy. So this shift will be important. Biogas is particularly interesting, is in general the most environmentally friendly form of bioenergy because of its low impacts, its extremely low emissions, and as a clean form of one of the cleanest forms of renewables. And then the shift in solid bioenergy, as also noted by a previous speaker, that traditional use of biomass needs to be phased out fairly quickly, and preferably by 2030, as the modern uses are rapidly increasing. You can take the next slide. Number of countries in the region have been working on their bioeconomy strategies, and by bioeconomy we mean this very cross-cutting approach, and that means that it addresses biotech, it cuts across the sectors, it deals with this sort of complex range of issues. But in some cases, there is also a direct relevance to the sectoral issues. It can be in health, in agriculture, it can relate to rural development. And this is also why bioeconomy is a very broad view that tries to bring together and avoids the sectoral approach, which can sometimes lead to a lower efficiency, or actually not taking advantage of the development benefits. We can take the next slide. Just to give an example of regional cooperation, it was this example of the fact that if energy and climate security are viewed from a regional perspective, in that case, biofuels would be produced and used, let's say, and there would be a balancing on a regional basis. So instead of each country, trying to produce close to what it needs for its targets, the regional trade would make up for this, and that reduces the costs and the emissions for the whole region. So looking at energy and climate security together and from a regional perspective has both economic and environmental advantages. Can take the next. So then, just to say that the idea with this view on bringing in this bioeconomy view is that you balance these different visions. You have a biotechnology vision. Some countries in the region are investing a lot in biotech, but others are thinking more about the resources, upgrading bioresources for advanced biofuels, for example. And then the bioecology vision is really important because of the rich biodiversity and the sensitive ecosystems which have to be maintained or restored for future generations. And this is important both for climate, but also for development goals in general. Can take the next slide. So just to summarize, there's some bullets here, so I think you have to press one at a time. Yeah, there's the first. So yeah, the ASEAN region depends significantly on these sectors that are related to the bioeconomy. Can take the next. Foreign direct investment is among the most significant in the world, so that offers opportunities. The region is home to some of the world's richest biodiversity. This is extremely important in developing the bioeconomy, but also faces these development disbenefits, the agricultural burning, the deforestation that has been observed, air pollution. So investment and interest in biotech and in bioresources has been increasing, which is a very positive sign in the region. And then, so complementarity and through cooperation offers what we might call strategic win-win scenarios. And so finally, to say that a sustainable bioeconomy in ASEAN improves energy security, carbon management and sinks, and also biodiversity. So thanks. I'm based at the SEI Asia Regional Center in Bangkok. And here you can see on the map the other SEI centers around the world. And we are working on these issues related to bioeconomy in a global initiative. And you can get more information here. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you, Dr. Francis, and also thank you for all your attention during the all panelists presentation, and we may now start the Q&A session. So I would like to invite any participants here in Lao or online if you have any questions by raising your hand, or you may also comment on the Zoom for the virtual participants. So I would start the questions by asking the floor if there are any questions you would like to raise to the all panelists. All right, so I have questions. Since also the time is quite tight, I will be directed asking. I have one question which will be asked for all the panelists. So currently the ASEAN Center for Energy is preparing to construct the ASEAN Renewable Energy Long-Term Roadmap by highlighting 5 pillars, which are the power generation, decentralized renewable energy for industry, biofuel, and job creation. So first, I would like to ask Ms. Yosiana, So in the future, the energy demand for industry will significantly increase. How do you overview these situations, especially the role of energy transition to improve renewable energy penetration in the industrial sector? So please, Ms. Yosiana.
Thank you so much, Dewa, for the questions. Yes, in the ASEAN Renewable Energy Outlook that we launched last year, we see the significant energy demand growth also in industrial sectors. And we projected that the electrifications powered by renewable energy will also grow significantly in the regions. And also, but we also need to take a look pretty closely in the hard to abate sectors. For example, like shipping, aviations as well. So we, right now at IRENA, we are doing a lot of studies for hydrogen, for example, to address these issues. But yes, for the ASEAN regions, we predicted that the electrifications at the end use sectors as well as at industry will be very significant, and it will be powered by renewable energy.
Thank you, Ms. Yosiana. For the second question, I would like to ask Dr. Anis Zaman. So I noticed on your presentation that you present the scenario which capped by 2030, and on the last two slides you mentioned about the practical approaches is also important for achieving the target within 2050. And as you may know as well, that ASEAN member states also already committed for carbon neutrality or net zero emission target. So considering the long-term targets, so what the strategic approach can be taken by ASEAN regionally or nationally to pursue this target? Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. Yes, you are right that we have identified and we have observed that it is technically possible and also economically makes sense to really start the journey towards net zero. And I also, as you mentioned, that some ASEAN member countries have also announced their intention to move towards that path. Now, for the regional approach, what I would suggest, of course, a research or a study needs to be undertaken to really identify the challenges and opportunities. What are the challenges are there to move towards net zero by 2050? Because at this point of time, I don't think many energy policies are really looking at long-term planning. So 2050 is another 30 years or less than, just a little less than 30 years. So 30 years energy planning needs to be done. And those studies can actually look at what needs to be done, what would be the energy demand, and how that can be brought down to a situation where the emissions, low emissions or low carbon technologies can be deployed. Renewable energy roadmap that is being talked about in this session is an important area. Of course, that will be an useful, but not only renewable energy is not only the one solution. As I mentioned in my presentation, there is a need for, or I would say a huge need for energy efficiency improvement, because if do not improve energy efficiency, we would be really wasting a huge amount of fund or money for renewable energy, which probably we wouldn't need. So energy efficiency is an important area. We need to move towards kind of electrification wherever it's possible. So electrification in the cooking sector that I mentioned, electrification of the transport sector that I mentioned, and as Yosi mentioned, that there are hard to abate sectors like the aviation and marine. We understand that, but we also need to kind of just see what are the other options. Energy carrier hydrogen could be an option for those. So actually, in summary, what we need to do, we need to come up with a kind of a strategic planning that could be done through some commissioning, some studies, and then the ASEAN Center for Energy might actually really develop a roadmap towards net zero by 2050 for its ASEAN member countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anis The next question I would like to raise to Dr. Francis Johnson. So, addressing your presentations that expanding biofuel energy for energy proposals actually play a critical role for the energy security in ASEAN. But also it needs to address some critical issues, for example, like sustainable feedstock, land use change, or even the food security. So in brief, could you explain in more detail on what approach should be strategically taken by ASEAN member states to address these issues? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that the region, of course, has a very rich potential for biofuels and has exploited some of this. However, it's also the case that there are many sensitive ecosystems in the region that need to be safeguarded. So, and that is why it all comes, I think, as one big package. For example, the presentation earlier showing the need to meet energy efficiency targets. So the less demand there is in the transport sector, the easier it is to meet a higher percentage with biofuels. So if we keep expanding consumption in the transport sector, then of course it gets harder and harder to meet the targets for biofuels. So it's all one big integrated package if we want to meet, particularly if we want to meet climate targets and safeguard biodiversity at the same time. So, so for this reason, biofuels in particular have to be approached carefully, and that's why the need to move to the more advanced biofuels, second generation biofuels, possibly in some cases third generation biofuels if you look decades from now. So the investments in research are also critical. And then more generally, using land and biomass more efficiently will create the space to use more for biofuels, as well as for other non-food uses. We presently use really most of our land globally, as well as in the region, for either agricultural crops, but also especially for animals, for grazing of animals or animal feeds. And so a more balanced use of land and biomass, including for energy, but also bio-based materials, as well as the liquid biofuels. So it's this sort of balanced, integrated approach that can, I think, deliver the greatest benefits. Of course, it takes a lot more work and coordination across the different sectors, but that's usually how it is. So that's a short summary.
Right, thank you, Dr. Francis. So because of the time limitation, so I need to cut the Q&A sessions. But before we close the session, I would like to ask each panelist to deliver 1 minute of closing remarks to address the strategic approach must be taken to improve renewable energy expansion in the ASEAN. So first, I would like to invite Ms. Yosiana, then followed by Dr. Anizaman, Dr. Francis Johnson, and Ms. Monica Merdekawati, respectively. So 1 minute, you may start from now, Ms. Yosiana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, moderators. As I said in my presentations, that the ASEAN region will be a key driver of the global energy demand growth over the next 3 decades. And it is very important to aggressively do the energy transitions. But of course, the ASEAN region is a very unique region where each of the ASEAN member states has its own uniqueness and has its own phase. But as Irina suggested in our second renewable energy outlook, that renewable energy must be deployed significantly, and also doing electrifications in all energy sectors wherever it's possible. And the Irina stands ready to support the ASEAN member states through the implementations of the Memorandum of Understanding that we signed in 2018, and of course working together with other partners as well. And I will be in person during the RESSN annual meeting on Friday. I apologize, I cannot be there in person for today's meeting, but I will be happy to share our progress and achievement, and also next plan under the MOU, and also working together with the ASEAN member states to accelerate the energy transitions in the regions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Josiana. And then Dr. Anizaman, please.
Thank you, moderator. Just in a very short way, I would say that I totally agree with what the previous speaker was saying, that there will be a huge demand for energy in the ASEAN sector. And of course, moving towards a higher share of renewable energy is very important. Now we know that the renewable energy is the key driver, but as I have been mentioned, that we also need to really look at increasing energy efficiency, because energy efficiency first and renewable energy. But of course, these two can go hand in hand. How this can be achieved is just making a kind of regional roadmap that is being discussed today, and also slowly moving towards net zero is important. Now, the integrated energy planning that needs to be done as well at the national level, just so that it can be aggregated to the regional level as well. Many countries, as I have mentioned in my presentation, have developed the SDG 7 roadmap, and that could be a kind of basis to start their journey towards that. I'm also very thankful to the ASEAN Center for Energy taking this initiative to develop this regional roadmap for renewable energy. ESCAP, from the ESCAP side, ESCAP would be very happy to collaborate if there are any opportunities. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Anizaman. Next, Dr. Francis Jones, for your final remarks. Thank you.
Yeah, just to agree with the speakers that it is a very dynamic region, and although there are a lot of challenges, there are clearly tremendous opportunities through the regional engagement and cooperation, that you are undertaking yourselves. And so these components that we have discussed for reaching the goals in the coming decades: energy efficiency, renewables, biofuels, and bioeconomy. I also noticed the mention of carbon removal, which I have alluded to as well. This will also be critical because of the hard to abate sectors, as well as the fact that investing in carbon removal also can contribute to adaptation and to ecosystem restoration in some cases. So these strategic goals taken together can be enhanced through regional cooperation. I think that's the important message. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Francis. And the last, Ms. Monica, for your final remarks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Dewa, for the opportunity. So maybe the speaker here already bring up all the important message. So what I would like to say is just highlighting the RE regional approach message, that actually member states has all the needed experience. What we need is how we can share the experience with each other and to coordinate better, especially understanding like with the planning and investment of the RE projects, and also the grid interconnection to be better designed and carefully decided, so like it caters all member states needs, and also to achieve the regional target. I think that's all from my side, but apologies, Mr. Dewa, if it's okay, I would like to also invite Mr. Michael, because unfortunately he has to go to other meeting at 11, but we due to miscoordination, we didn't invite him for the opening remarks as one of the collaborator of the RE regional approach. So first, we would like to convey our apologies, sincere apologies, and yeah, I would like to invite also the floor to Mr. Michael. Hello, Mr. Michael, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So yeah, before we close the session, I just wanted to add a welcome from ESCAP as well, because we're very happy to support this process. this focus group discussion for the ASEAN Renewable Energy Long-Term Roadmap. And I'd like to acknowledge the remarks made by Mr. Soprasut, the Deputy Director General of Lao PDR, Ministry of Mines and Energy, also Mr. Misran of Malaysia, the Deputy Undersecretary from the Ministry of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change, and of course, Mr. Christoph Zamora, the Senior Manager of ACE. So I would also like to welcome all of you and really signal the support of ESCAP for this process. We really welcome this initiative to develop the long-term renewable energy roadmap, because ASEAN is such a crucial part of the Asia Pacific and indeed of the global economy. And as we've been discussing, renewable energy is really cornerstone of the that we're working on there, reducing emissions, contributing to the SDGs, Sustainable Development Agenda, economic, because we know that investment in renewables generates more jobs and economic multipliers than investing in fossil fuels. And I think it's that the plans that we're discussing think about these long-term technological and systems changes. If we continue the unsustainable pathway of relying on fossil fuel power generation, we miss out on creating this new low-carbon economy. And indeed, the bigger picture objective for all of us, not just ASEAN, is to get to mid-zero by to net zero emissions by the middle of this century. And so to get to this net zero position, I think these intermediate targets are really important. So we need to find a way to transition to this future through a series of intermediate steps. So the challenges that we're all discussing this morning, I think, go beyond just the simple challenge of adding more renewables to the mix, but we need to also consider how do we integrate different types of energy, how do we electrify end uses, if we have surplus energy, how do we store it for later use, can we raise efficiency of the overall energy system, can we harness hydrogen as an energy carrier, and also can we use more renewable energy in energy intensive industries. So doing this requires new ideas, new policies, new technologies, and new business models. And as we go about this challenge, I think, as you all know, in ACE, regional cooperation is a really important part of that, facilitating the sharing of experiences and good practices and policy support. So we're committed to continue to work with ASEAN members to support their transition to renewable energy. You just heard from my colleague Anis Zaman about the SDG 7 roadmaps that we've been developing for countries in the region. And this is a really important element of our support. So I'm really glad that all of you are meeting together in Vientiane, and I hope that you have a very good exchange and dialogue. And we look forward to the finalization of this long-term renewable energy roadmap, which I think will be adopted by ministers when they meet in Bali in August this year. So thank you very much, and we look forward to working with you much more into the future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williamson, for the remarks. Also, Ms. Yosiana, Dr. Anis Zaman, Dr. Francis Johnson, and Ms. Monika Merdekawati for your valuable insight and sharing. And I would like to say thank you for all the audience for your participation during the discussions. And by this, I would like to end the discussion today, and I will give back the floor to the MC. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Distinguished delegate, ladies and gentlemen, we will take coffee break for 10 minutes. And I have some announcements. For the public participant will join the meeting again on the afternoon. Thank you.